727, you're on a poker session.
Oh, hi. Hey, Lyman. How's it going?
Good. How you doing? Who's this?
This is Bob.
Hey, Bob.
The real Shack on the forums.
Oh, hey.
I don't really post.
I know who you are. How you doing?
Oh, really?
Yeah. How you? Maybe I know a guy who on the forums is Shaq. I don't know. Maybe it's a different guy.
Probably different. But I'm curious. I like the stuff you say about like letting the losing players lose the way they want to.
That's right.
And I'm wondering how do you apply that to the guys who like to talk shit at the table, kind of maybe play Monday morning QB, or when they get into a hand, they'll kind of go after people. Maybe they'll test everybody at the table, see who gets really tilted. Do you like to troll them back, or do you kind of pump them up a little bit, or just kind of stay quiet?
Well, you know, if there's like a table captain and he's a loser, and everyone knows he's a loser, I'll troll him, but I'll troll him in a way that he doesn't even know. I'll just basically say really dumb stuff to him to see what sort of dumb stuff he'll say back. I love it when there's like a really smart like table captain guy at the table who's a loser. My favorite question to ask him is, what's your favorite hand? Because it always starts the dumbest conversation in the history of the world. And then basically I say, well, you know, or I give some dumb answer like King 7 suited, you know, whatever. And then we get a conversation about that. And then if that doesn't work, my other favorite conversation, I mean, this is one pretty easy to predict, is what's your least favorite hand? And then there'll always be a big table conversation about that. I mean, I'm playing in like 5, 10, 10, 20 level games. And you think, oh, these guys are seasoned professional. No, same fucking conversation. My least favorite hand I always say is jacks. And everyone, I mean, inevitably everyone will agree with me that jacks is the worst. In PLO games, it doesn't work as well because hands just don't matter that much. But I mean, if the guy's causing trouble for another fishy player, you know, I might try and put him in check a little bit. But if nobody really cares and he's just a blowhard, I like blowhards at the table. I make it interesting because I mean, no matter what, I'll end up just like actually getting in a conversation with them. It's amazing, and it sounds sort of dumb, but when you ask a dumb player what their favorite hand is, it's amazing the conversations you'll get into and how much they'll give away about how they like to play poker. And I'm going to tell you something. Let me take a puff. This is a very important piece of information for live poker players. In online poker, your goal isn't to play perfect. Your goal is basically to play unexploitable, because you're at a lot of tables and you have to get in a lot of hands, and you're not working on a lot of exploitative strategies unless and even when you see a guy whose HUD stats come up and they're fishy HUD stats, you're still at a lot of tables and there's still a lot of other players that you got to a lot of other things you got to keep your mind on. You end up taking a lot of like just sort of standard click, 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 click lines, because it's not going to do you a lot of good to try to focus in on one guy out of like 72 guys you're playing against or whatever. But if you try to bring that style of play to a casino, you'll never be a winning player. I mean, you'll win, but you won't win enough to make a living, okay? And here's the reason why. The game is too slow and the rake is too high, okay? So when you play live poker, you basically have to try to play perfect poker. You have to do some very, very strange stuff, like 3-bet, check, fold, flop, because these people play in such a straightforward manner that if you're just 3-betting and then c-betting, you're just wasting money against a lot of players who will absolutely never, you could 3-bet them and then check to them, and they absolutely will never bet unless they made a pair, okay? They'll just check behind. So there's a lot of situations in live poker where if you understand the way a guy plays, you can play perfect poker against him. And if somebody watched you play your hands, they would say, oh my God, you folded a set in that spot. That's so exploitable. But you can't be exploited because the game moves too slow and you don't see these players often enough They don't see enough hands from you for them to exploit you back, even if they had the ability to, and many of them don't. So, me personally, I love to talk to players at the table, and I learn a lot about the way that they think about the game and the way that they play. Right? Think of it this way, Shaq. Think of how many times you're reading a hand history and the person just describes his opponent, a hand history from live poker, and the person just describes his opponent as a fish, or the person just says that my opponent could hold any two cards here, or, you know, there's really no way to figure out what he's thinking in this situation. That's all bullshit. It's complete freaking bullshit. Fish have a plan. Recreational players have a plan. Their plan doesn't make any sense, but they have a plan. And if you don't take the time to figure out what their plan is, you're losing a ton of money. So there's two ways to play poker. There's basically a way that is unexploitable, aka correct, and then there's a way that's extremely exploitable, but if you're doing it at a live table, it's not going to hurt you. It's the way that you make the most money. So people say, like, let me put this in better context. I'd take a puff of cigar. People say, oh, I want to be the best poker player in the world. Okay? And generally, on 2+2, or you know, in some forum, what they mean by that is, you know, they want to play in some nosebleed game against other great players, and they're all going to fucking work on some inexploitable line, and they're going to try to, you know, put their GTO strategy up against somebody else's GTO strategy. But that isn't necessarily being the best player in the world. If, let's say, I don't know who's considered the best player right now. I think it used to be Ike Haxton before he cheated everybody. But, I mean, maybe it's Jungle Man or whoever. I don't know who's considered the best player in the world right now. But, okay, let's just say it's Jungle Man. Whatever. If Jungle Man comes out to the Bicycle Casino and plays in my super fishy 5, 10, 20 PLO game and makes $117 an hour, not really paying attention to anybody, but just playing exceptionally good poker. Because let's be honest, these guys are exceptionally good poker players. But I play a completely different style based on the fact that I pay attention to my opponents and understand my opponents and have specific strategies for each opponent, and I make $132 an hour, then who's really the best player in the world? Now you say, well, your game doesn't travel. And that's true. Let me take a puff here. Puff and a sip. Oh, this Ballast Point is such good beer. But you'll say, your game doesn't travel and Jungle Man's does. And that's true. I readily admit that. My game does not travel. If I come to a new casino and play against new players, I'm basically lost. Because I try to play perfect poker. I try to understand my opponents, and it takes months, weeks, years in some circumstances to pick up their tells, to pick up their betting habits, to pick up their basic philosophy on poker. But that's what I do, you know. That's what I do. I play at one casino. I've played at one casino and basically one table for the last 5.5 years. And at that one table, I am the best player in the world. I don't know what else to say about it. That's what's so beautiful about poker. You don't have to be what someone else tells you to be. At the end of the day, if you're doing something you like and you understand how to do it and you make enough money to live a happy, comfortable life, then you're the best player in the world. That's why sometimes, you know, I get into it with these little kiddies. They don't understand what they're talking about.